You are seen. You are worthy. You are not alone. The world loses one person to suicide every 40 seconds. Let's change the stats. Together, we can say not suicide. Not today.
On February 2012, a young boy left his home to go to a local 7-Eleven for some Skittles and a drink. The horror that he would face on his way back home is something that is truly unthinkable. The murder of Trayvon Martin is not only a case that shook American history, but a case that started an entire movement. Join me as I examine the case of the murder of Trayvon Martin on this episode of True Crime, Authors, and Extraordinary People.
Welcome to True Crime, Authors, and Extraordinary People, the podcast where we bring two passions together. The show that gives new meaning to the old adage, truth is stranger than fiction, and reminding you that there is an extraordinary person in all of us. Here is your host, David McClam.
What's going on, everybody? And welcome to another episode of True Crime, Authors, and Extraordinary People. Of course, I'm your man, David McClam. Hey, if you guys haven't already, make sure you follow us on all of our social media. One link to a link tree will get you every place you need to go pertaining to the show. All right, as I always remind you at the top of the show, if you are someone that is considering hurting yourself or someone else, please call 988. You can call or text. Remember, nothing in this world is worth your life. And if no one has told you this today, let me be the first. I do care and I do need you to be here. All right. So as you guys already know, this is Black History Month. We're almost to the end of it. Usually on this month, I do a whole lot of facts for 29 days. I give you one fact a day. Unfortunately, this year, I did not have time. But I did not want Black History Month to go away without doing a case that has not only gripped the African American community, but also the world. It is this time of year that I feel that people is more acceptable to listening to things of Black history because it is Black History Month. But for those of us that are Black, we live Black history every day. And we are grateful to be able to share these stories with you that hopefully we can learn together. So as you heard coming in, today we're doing the case of Trayvon Martin. It is truly a case that should never be forgotten and should be continuously told because of what happened in this case and how it went down and what happened to the person that committed this crime. So let me tell you how this is going to go down. I think I've told you guys before that sometimes I'm going to bring over cases that I have previously done from A Day with Crime. For those of you who are new and don't know about A Day with Crime, True Crime Authors and Extraordinary Person is actually my second podcast. Extinguished is now my third. My first podcast happened almost now 5 years ago that I did with my oldest daughter, Geneva, which was a history-making podcast, and we were not even trying to make history. We were just trying to get together, do a podcast as father and daughter. That podcast was history-making because not only were we the only father-daughter in the true crime genre, but we were the only father-daughter team at that time in all of podcasting. From what I know now, from what I've seen, I think we still kind of hold that record. There is some mother-son podcast, but I haven't seen the father-daughter. And of course, being that we were the first and being that we were African-American, we made history again. That podcast lasted for over 4.5 years before things happened in life and my daughter could not continue. We did amass over 500,000 listeners in the lifetime of that podcast. And there is over 200 episodes that was there. So sometime on these cases, you just can't go back and recapture what you originally recorded. There's a lot of research that goes into these, and there's a lot of feeling and emotions that go behind these. And no matter what topic you're talking on, if you've already done a case once, you can never capture that lightning in a bottle by redoing it. So I think earlier in the first season, I said sometimes I'm going to bring some of these cases over. This today is one of those. So once again, you get to hear me and my daughter go back and forth. I have gotten some feedback that some people like it when I do have a guest on the show, which is at least 2 times a month, that we go back and forth and we can banter, and they like the collaboration. So here you go. I'm sure this won't be the last one of these I bring over. I want you guys to pay attention, though, because like I always say to you when I do these kind of cases, I always remove race and anything controversial out of it until I can no longer ignore it by putting together the evidence. I think if you listen, this case will also show you that not all Black people off the bat feels like things are a racial nature, even if it looks like that. There will be some things in this version of the Trayvon Martin story, even if you heard other podcasts do it or anybody else, I promise you this. If you listen to the end, there will be some stuff in this one that you don't even know that took place, because my daughter sure didn't. And listen to what her reaction is. So without further ado, here's the Trayvon Martin case. I'll be back at the end to tell you where I stand now on the case and if my stance is still the same about some things that I've said in here. And then I'll tell you who we're going to have the next week. So here you go, the murder of Trayvon Martin. So let's jump into today's case. We want to let you guys know that today's case is a fan request. So if you guys have listened to us over the last few episodes, we always say that we got a fan request that will trump whatever we had next to shoot. And this is true to our word. So this case is brought to you by Cherie Reed. She wrote us through email, asked us to tackle this case. And this case today is on Trayvon Martin. It is truly a case we probably would have done at some time, but since this is Cherie's request, here we go. So Trayvon Benjamin Martin was born February 5th of 1995 to Sabrina Fulton and Tracy Martin. Although his parents divorced in 1999, they are still very vocal and they are together on the whole Trayvon Martin situation. He resided in Miami Gardens, Florida. He had dreams of playing professional basketball. In high school, that was put aside, though, because he wanted to start a career in working with airplanes. So due to that, in his first year at Carroll City High, he attended classes in the morning, and then he went to George T. Baker Aviation School for the rest of the school day. So he was a very smart kid, and his aunt always said that they never seen him walking around without wearing his prized hoodie. This is very important to this case. So it's very important you guys remember, because his hoodie does come up quite a bit throughout this case. So even though he was a smart kid, he also had a few problems, and we have to discuss that, being the true journalists that we are. So he did have a few problems in his life, and it was used in his case against him. So he was known on Twitter by the nickname Slim. Under his nickname, he posted thousands of tweets, and according to his digital footprint, he was portrayed as having a sense of humor and a preoccupation with girls, which at age 17, that's very, very normal. Some of his tweets talked about street life as well as his unhappiness at his then high school crop, which he had transferred to in his sophomore year from Carroll City. His critics always like to point out the fact that he had tattoos and he had empty marijuana bags, as well as he was wearing a gold grill in a picture that was produced online. He had text messages supposedly saying he had a violent side, and also photos had surfaced of Trayvon posing with a gun. Efforts were made to keep this out of the public, as well as the fact that on the week that he was shot, he also was suspended from school due to marijuana. However, barring all that, on February 26, 2012, everything changed when Trayvon walked to a 7-Eleven store where he purchased some Skittles and a soft drink. After returning from the store, he was spotted by George Zimmerman, a mixed Hispanic male, and a neighborhood watch officer. Zimmerman called the Sanford City Police to report Martin, saying he looked suspicious. An altercation happened between the two, and Zimmerman shot and killed Martin. He claimed self-defense, and he was arrested and charged with Trayvon's murder. On July 13, 2013, Zimmerman was acquitted of second-degree murder and manslaughter. This was greatly in part due in large to stand your ground law, which is all through the state of Florida. So that's my synopsis. But before we go on, I would like Geneva, since you live in the state of Florida, why don't you go ahead and tell all of our listeners exactly what stand your ground law is?
All right. Well, the stand your ground law is written up inside of the Florida statutes. It is written in at 776.013, and it reads: home protection, threatened use of deadly force, presumption of fear or death or great bodily harm. Section 1 does state a person who is in a dwelling or residence in which the person has a right to be, has no duty to retreat, and has the right to stand his or her ground and use or threaten to use a non-deadly force against another when and to the extent that the person reasonably believes that such conduct is necessary to defend himself or herself or another against the other's imminent use of unlawful force. Or B, deadly force, if he or she reasonably believes that using or threatening to use such force is necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm to himself or herself or another, or to prevent the imminent commission of a forcible felony. The one that we are talking about is using deadly force or a weapon, such as a gun, in order to kill someone. So essentially, you can get away with murder if you feel that you are being threatened. So if someone was to break into my house right now, and I was to pick up the can of Glade spray that I have sitting in front of my computer at the moment, and I threw it at them, it hit them in the head, and it killed them, theoretically, I could get away with that because I could have said that I used deadly force in order to protect myself or whoever was in my home.
And I believe, if I'm not wrong, that Florida still has a law where you can conceal. Pretty much, according to him himself, George Zimmerman was actually wearing his gun where it kind of was in plain view, or he just had to lift his shirt up and there was his gun.
It is legal to conceal a weapon as long as you have the concealed weapons permit. That is correct, as long as you are not a felon and can otherwise carry a gun and you have done all of the necessary things, such as take classes. From what I have understood from people that I know that do carry concealed weapons, as long as you go through what you're supposed to and you carry guns that meet the requirement for the legal concealed carry, there is nothing that they can do about if you have a gun concealed or unconcealed. There are plenty of people that walk around, at least where I live, I see plenty of people that are packing right on their hip. And as long as you don't enter a dwelling that does not, or that has signs that say no weapons, there's really nothing that they can do about it. So if you were to, even if you're not a police officer, who they obviously carry their weapons unconcealed, I have seen people go into certain places such as McDonald's, some other fast food places as well. McDonald's was just one off the top of my head. And I worked there for a while and had seen people walk in with unconcealed weapons, I guess. Maybe not unconcealed completely, but, you know, under shirts or whatever in a holster. And there was nothing that we could do about it. Now, there are bars and such down here that do not allow you to bring any weapons, concealed or unconcealed, at all. And they will have, they're mostly biker bars, but they will have big signs that say something such as no weapons, no colors.
Well, down here, they're everywhere because of that. So they're, you know, they don't want to have any Crips and Bloods, whatever, showing up at the same time. And so they just say no colors. But
right. They don't. Yeah. And some of them will say like no weapons, no colors, no attitudes. Like,
so all of that is important to this case, which you guys are about to find out why, because all of that at some point, the concealment of the gun, the stand your ground law, all factors into Trayvon Martin's case. So let's go ahead and dive in a little bit. Before we start, I want to say that we are trying to be as respectful to the victim in this case, being Trayvon, as we possibly can. I know that there's been some people that's kind of eaten us up a little bit over a couple of other cases like Jody Arias, for instance, because of the stance that we had. You guys would not be happy if we left something out and then you wouldn't research yourself and you found it. So we have to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly, no matter where we stand on. We're just going to give you the straight truth, and then we'll take you from there. So on the Trayvon Martin case, I do want to point out that he was not high. He was not under the influence of any drugs, alcohol at the time that this incident took place. He was actually minding his own business. There had been a lot of break-ins around his area at the time, and George Zimmerman was the neighborhood watch captain. Now, there has been some speculation over that, though, because if you watch certain things and listen to certain things, they would say, some people say he was, and then some people will say that he is a wannabe acting neighborhood watch captain. So let's go into that a little bit. Doing the research, I found out that he wanted this job because he wanted to be a cop in his earlier years. For whatever reason, that did not work out for George Zimmerman, so the next best thing that he thought he could do would be the neighborhood watch captain. In this role, he carried his gun all the time. For my opinion, just from what I've researched on the guy, he looked for ways and reasons to want to run around and do something. He is what we would call a guy who has what we call the big man complex, because he was short, and a lot of people, and I'm not saying all short people have this, but there are some people who feel because of their height that they're bigger when they have a gun or they have some kind of authority, and this is kind of the way in which George Zimmerman was acting. I also want to point out the fact, because race greatly comes into this case, and I have tried to remove myself from the racial side of things, but I can't, because what you're going to find out as we discuss this case, the research takes you back to it, and some of the things that George Zimmerman himself has done is pointing all to being a racial situation. So I do want to point out, since there's been great argument about his race on, online and every place else I've seen, George Zimmerman is a mixed breed. He is white and he is Hispanic. His father is white, his mother is Hispanic. So there you go. That is important because it goes back to the race thing, and there's a lot of debate online about if Trayvon was white and he was black, would this be different? So what I want to do first of all is get Geneva. Let's have an open discussion. What do we think about George Zimmerman? Let's tackle this topic by topic. The night that this happened, well, let's do this first. Before you answer that, I have the 911 call that George Zimmerman made to the police at that time. This call, folks, is important because it's going to set up our whole discussion, and it's going to get you to think about some things of why this kind of goes back to race. And then before this is over, I'm going to tell you a couple things you may or may not know that's going to further that point. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to play for you in its entirety the 911 call that was made that night by George Zimmerman. It is 4 minutes and 11 seconds long. It is the unredacted version, so it gives out the phone numbers and the addresses. Nobody go call them and try to find out where they live, because I'm sure they've all moved. We know George Zimmerman definitely's moved. And I want you to pay close attention. There's a couple of things that George Zimmerman talks about or says that we want to discuss with you guys and see if you guys are on the same wavelength. So here you go, the 911 call.
Sanford Police Department. Line is being recorded. Sean.
Hey, we've had some break-ins in my neighborhood, and there's a real suspicious guy. It's Retrieview Circle. The best address I can give you is 111 Retrieview Circle. This guy looks like he's up to no good, or he's on drugs or something. It's raining, and he's just walking around looking about.
Okay, and this guy, is he white, black, or Hispanic?
He looks black.
Did you see what he was wearing?
Yeah, a dark hoodie, like a gray hoodie, and either jeans or sweatpants and white tennis shoes. He's sitting around here just staring.
Oh, he's just walking around
looking at all the houses.
Okay.
And now he's just staring at me.
Okay, and he said it's 1111 retrieve you, or 111?
That's the clubhouse.
That's the clubhouse. Do you know what he's near the clubhouse right now?
Yeah, now he's coming towards me.
Okay.
He's got his hand in his waistband. And he's a black male.
Okay. How old would you say he looks?
He's got a button on his shirt. Late teens.
Late teens, okay.
Mm-hmm. Something's wrong with him. Yeah. He's coming to check me out. He's got something in his hands. I don't know what his deal is.
Okay, just let me know if he does anything. Okay.
Over here.
Yeah, we got him on the way. Just let me know if this guy does anything else.
Okay. These assholes, they always get away. Yeah. When you come to the clubhouse, you come straight in and make a left. Actually, you would go past the clubhouse
Okay, it says on the left-hand side from the clubhouse?
No, you go in straight through the entrance, and then you make a left. You go straight in, don't turn and make a left. Shit, he's running.
He's running? Which way is he running?
Down towards the entrance of the neighborhood.
Okay. Which entrance is that he's heading towards?
The back entrance.
Are you following him?
Yeah.
Okay, we don't need you to do that.
Okay.
All right, sir, what is your name?
George. He ran.
All right, George, what's your last name?
Zimmerman.
And George, what's the phone number you're calling from?
407-435-2400.
All right, George, we do have them on the way. Do you want to meet with the officer when they get out there?
Yeah.
All right, where are you going to meet with them at?
If they come in through the gate, tell them to go straight past the clubhouse and straight past the clubhouse and make a left. And then they go past the mailboxes. Look at my truck.
Okay, what address are you parked in front of?
I don't know. It's a cut through, so I don't know the address.
Okay, do you live in the area?
Yeah.
What's your apartment number?
It's a home. It's 1950. Oh, crap. I don't want to give it out loud. I don't know where this kid is.
Okay, do you want to just meet with him right near the mailboxes then?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, George, I'll let him know to meet you with you out there. Okay?
Actually, could you have him call me and I'll tell him where I'm at?
Okay, yeah, that's no problem.
You need my number? You got it.
Yeah, I got it. 407-435-2400.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, no problem. I'll let them know to call you when they're in the area.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
So that was a 911 call. So let's start with this. So you heard the call, Geneva. The whole listeners heard it. Give me what your take is on that call.
I think he's a liar. To be honest, okay, so before today, I have heard the George Zimmerman 911 call. This was actually a case that I followed pretty close when it happened. This happened like in the throes of me trying to move to Florida. Like I was talking about moving to Florida while this was happening. You understand? So it actually kind of freaked me out a little bit. I was like, what? Like, you know what I mean? I was like freaking out and stuff, because people be telling me that like Florida's like it is in Hollywood and all that stuff. It's not. But anyways, I love Florida. Don't get me wrong. But I followed this case pretty close, and something about his 911 call just has never sat correctly with me. I understand being a little bit uneasy by the fact that there's someone strange walking around. He was wearing a hooded sweatshirt, which, I mean, whatever. A lot of people, I'm sure this will be mentioned later, but a lot of people in memory of him, maybe memoriam, whatever, of Trayvon, they had hoodies that were made that had different sayings on them that were dark colored hoodies, similar to the style that he had worn that night. I understand. I mean, he wasn't, from everything that I have seen, he was not a small dude. Like, he was a teenager, but he looked like a grown man. You know what I'm saying? So I can understand being a little bit freaked out by somebody just walking around where you think they're not supposed to be. But I feel like certain things that he said, Dad, we talked about this before, about him making the comment about something about these a-holes always get away with it under his breath in the call. So why are you, if you feel threatened, right, and you feel like someone's coming after you or whatever, like, first of all, why would you take a step like that and then make a comment like that? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. On top of, there is a spot where it sounds like screaming. It's disputed whether, whatever, who said it or who it was or whatever. But the call just doesn't seem genuine to me. Like, it's like he called in order to do what he felt was right, if you will, he felt that he was justified in doing it because he called.
I think George Zimmerman was looking for a fight that night, because here's some things that I'm going to tell you that maybe you or the public don't know.
Okay.
This will prove that we researched these cases. Okay, so the night before, George Zimmerman got into a fight with his wife. His wife even came forward and said that she doesn't know what happened because she was not home because she went to her father's house due to a fight. When they asked her, do you think that George Zimmerman was capable of doing this? She goes, oh, no. Here's why I think he's looking for a fight. One, he's already upset. Two, when he made that 911 call, he had just saw Trayvon appear. Okay. When you use terms, and I'm sorry, people, but it's the truth. When you use terms like these a-holes always get away with it, that could be taken in the same context as when somebody who is of racial nature, meaning it racially, say these people. If you know anything about African Americans, if you walk on the African American, man, you know what these people, first they say these people who, okay? It's in that same context. Now, here's the other part of why I think he was looking for a fight that night, analyzing the 911 tape. He's telling the police officers where he is. He's saying this guy's looking at me like he's, like he wants to do something. They ask him, is he white, black, or Hispanic? And he looks black. Now, if he was truly wearing his hoodie over his head at the time, how can you really see if he was that, or are you just speculating? Okay. On top of that, Trayvon, I guess, is walking along, and at one point he says, oh no, he's running. Well, let's talk about that for a minute. Breaking the tape, let's talk about why Trayvon ran. For those of you who don't know, after George Zimmerman started following him in his car, he was on the phone with his then girlfriend, who testified at the trial. He called his girlfriend and said, there's this guy who is following me, and I'm sorry for this language, but this is what he said. She said in court, well, I have to say it, but he said, this cracker's following me. He didn't know why this white dude was following him, and she said, run. And he said, I'm not going to run. I'm just going to put my hoodie on, and I'm going to keep walking. At some point where he began to feel uncomfortable, Trayvon decided to take off, still on the phone with his girlfriend, who he was talking to about this. So let's analyze that part right there. If he's using terms like these a-holes, if Trayvon is on the phone, which has been documented from his call records and from the testimony of his girlfriend, who could tell us more stuff about that, which we get into later, doesn't it kind of look like that he was just trying to cause problems with somebody? I mean, Trayvon is having to be the one that's there, but maybe he was racist and didn't want to deal with any black kid. Or do you think that maybe at this point, if a green kid came through, George Zimmerman would have still been on this same bender?
I honestly, I know that a lot of people have looked at this as a racist thing. I don't necessarily think that it would have mattered if he was black, green, or purple. You know what I'm saying? I don't think that it would have mattered if he was white. I don't think it would have mattered what color his skin actually was. The fact of the matter is, George Zimmerman had something out that night. I don't know. It could have been like you said. He could have just been looking for a fight. He could have just been mad or whatever. But for some reason, he felt the need to go after someone. And Trayvon just happened to be that person. I don't necessarily, yes, on the 911 call, they do ask him, well, what color he is, like, is he black, white, Hispanic? But at the same time, those are just routine questions. They have to ask you those questions so they know who the heck they're looking for if they're going to respond to your call. So I feel like even if we heard him say, well, from here, I can't tell what color he is. You know what I'm saying? Because if he was far enough away, you might just see a figure. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry, like, my fiance Keith, he's as white as a boy comes, okay? But if I see him from far away in the dark, in a dark colored hoodie, I may not be able to tell what color he is. I might be able to say, well, his stature looks like he could be white, or his stature looks like he could be black, but I'm not sure because I'm too far away. You know what I'm saying? So I don't think it would have really mattered that night what color this person was. I really don't even think it would have really mattered if they were male or female. I think that just the fact that they were an imposing figure, if you will, that looked like they could be threatening. And so George thought, oh, well, I'm Mr. Vigilante over here. Whether he was actually hired to do neighborhood watch or not, let's just assume that he was for a second. If he was hired to do neighborhood watch, I'm pretty sure that even neighborhood watch people are not supposed to use deadly force.
Okay, so again, ladies and gentlemen, understand I have tried my hardest. I set up at 2:30 this morning trying to remove race from this case, because this has been the biggest argument, is that black people was all supercharged because we the first ones are more racism. Here's the second reason why I cannot remove this, as he was not just being a racist that night. If you keep going down further in the tape, okay, now I guess the first part I skipped over is he started the tape off by saying, there has been some break-ins in my area lately, okay? If you go further down beyond the part where he makes the a-hole statement, he's telling the cops, oh, he's running now. And you can audibly hear him and the 911 running. He's now out of his car. The wind is smacking into his cell phone.
Right, you do hear him running.
Right, and the dispatcher says, are you following him? Now, throughout this time, when the dispatcher is asking that, if you listened closely, up underneath his breath, he said, effing dog.
He did.
Why are we still calling people names?
Right.
What are you meaning by the effing dog comment if you're trying to keep the peace? Now, the dispatcher is asking you, are you chasing him? And you say, yes, which the dispatcher comes back and say, we don't need you to do that. No, 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 no. And he says, okay. Further along down the tape, he's trying to get off the phone. If you're getting the same feeling that I'm getting, now that he know which way Trayvon went, he's standing there and the 911 dispatcher says, don't chase him. So he stopped, maybe audibly so that the 911 dispatcher could hear that he's not running anymore. Now he's trying to get off the phone. Tell him to come here. Where are you supposed to go? Tell him to come in, turn whatever, right or left, come down. Oh, no. You know what? On second thought, won't you just have him go ahead and give me a call when they get here? Okay, let's talk about that. Because as soon after he says, why don't you tell him to give me a call when they get here, he asked where his truck was parked. He goes, I don't really know what the address is. And when the dispatcher said, okay, yeah, we'll have him go ahead and give you a call, he hangs up the phone. Now, this is the gap. What do you think? And I'll give you what I think happened. What do you think happened in that gap between the time now that he hung up this phone, Trayvon got shot, and the cops actually show up?
Truthfully, I think that Mr. Zimmerman, I think he just stood there. I don't think he did anything, to be honest, because I don't see. Look, this is why, and I know, Dad, that you're having trouble with the separation of race, and that's fine because your reasons are valid. But the reason that I'm not so sure that this was, I mean, I understand why black people were up in arms about it. I understand that. I'm not going to. Or I'm not trying to belittle or discount anyone's feelings, black, white, Hispanic, whatever. I'm not trying to discount anyone's feelings. But the reason that I look at it the way that I do, which is that I am not 100% sure that it was race, is because I feel like George Zimmerman, no matter what color this person was, now Trayvon happened to be black, but I feel like, let's say that he saw a Spanish Mexican person running down that same street, or walking down that same street, and then he says he's running now, and he makes chase, right? I don't feel like anyone would have been safe from whatever wrath or fury that George Zimmerman was feeling. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm not saying for 1 second, I'm not trying to defend George Zimmerman. I'm not trying to say that he's not a racist. For all I know, he's the most racist person on this earth. You know what I'm saying? But I'm not so sure that this incident originally started because Trayvon was black. Now, it is possible that after he made chase and he made the comment about this effing dog, it is very possible that by that point, it was about race. But to begin with, I'm not 100% sure that it was about race, because really, if he thought that he was one of the burglars, because he had said that there were some break-ins in this area, or if he thought that this person was a teenager, which he was, while obviously you could take it as his comment of these a-holes as being a racial comment, it could have also have been, while he did not say like these a-hole teenagers or these a-hole burglars, the only reason that I'm even willing to entertain the idea that he may not have been, that comment may not have been racially charged, is because he did say that there were burglaries, and most people, I'm sorry to say, when there's burglaries in any kind of a neighborhood, especially if it is a nicer-ish neighborhood, tend to blame teenagers. You know what I'm saying? They tend to blame teenagers or homeless people. So,
okay, well, let's move on further with that, because you'll see shaping why as we go to why I can't point myself on the color thing when we get towards the end of this. So let's talk about the night that he actually got shot. What happened next? Again, remember, his girlfriend was on the phone and heard all of this. Color or no color, this is what happened next. So Trayvon went running through the apartment complex while talking to his girlfriend. His girlfriend comes back and says that at one point Trayvon stops and says that now he was cornered, because I'm going to tell you what I think happened. He wanted to get off of the 911 call so quick because he wanted to follow Trayvon, which is exactly what he did. When Trayvon made the comment to his girlfriend, "Oh, he's here, I'm cornered," because he had pinned him down where he was at, which is why he wanted the cops to call him before when they got there so he could say whatever he was going to say or do whatever he's going to do. Trayvon asked him, "Why are you following me?" And Zimmerman replied with, "What are you doing here?" At which point, his girlfriend says that she heard someone push Trayvon. A scuffle ensued. Now, if you let George Zimmerman tell it, Trayvon came up and he popped him in the jaw after he asked a question, and he went reaching for his gun, and he said, "You gonna die tonight." Okay, let me just tell you something about just people in general, unless you're dumb. If you see somebody that has a gun holstered to themselves, and if you're not quite sure if you can get that gun and use it on someone else, you are not going to reach for that person's gun. What you are doing is introducing an unknown now into this scenario. The unknown is, if I holster this gun, am I going to get it? Or is he going to get it? Am I getting shot that night, or is he? I do not believe Trayvon went for his gun because of that. But the part you did not hear, which I had to post these somewhere, was there was another timeline at that precise point where neighbors around now is starting to call 911. On one of the ladies' 911 calls, you distinctly hear somebody crying out, "Help me, help me." Now, George Zimmerman at the time was like a 35, 36-year-old man.
right.
My voice sounds differently than my voice did when I was 17. You can clearly tell who was screaming in that. My question is, if you are the man with the gun, if you have all the control, if you know you can take that gun out at any time and shoot somebody, why are you the one then that's going to be on the ground screaming? Because that's what he said. He goes, "Oh, everybody says it was George Zimmerman." Now, George Zimmerman never came and said it was him. Now, did he? Nope. But everybody else is saying it was him that was on the ground that was screaming, right? So here's the question. How is it that he was the one on the ground screaming, since that's what people are saying, but Trayvon was shot square in the heart? If you're tussling the way you say you are, Trayvon got the gun the way he said that he supposedly got it. He was trying to take the gun back, and the trigger was pulled. That's not a sit up straight in the heart shot.
Right.
You may hit a thigh, you may hit a groin, you may hit a stomach.
You may hit you're not gonna have a straight shot. You're gonna shoot, and the bullet's gonna land where it's gonna land.
Right. But he was shot directly in the heart.
Right.
So the question is, do you think that that's probably what happened that night? And you can tell he wasn't coming from a burglary. The boy had a bag of Skittles and Arizona iced tea in his hand. What do you think probably happened that night?
I think that it's what you said about that he was looking for a fight, For sure. I mean, I don't dispute the fact that this man was looking to fight someone, that he was looking to be a small town hero. You know what I'm saying, like, if you will. I'm not discounting that or discrediting it. Man, I really wanted to look at this a different way other than race. Now I'm having a little bit of trouble now actually looking at it from a different perspective than race. Just because if it had been simply that he chased the boy, he shot the boy, he claimed that it was self-defense, I could say that maybe he was just looking for a fight, not necessarily race. But considering that he chased him and then attacked him, but then claimed that he was a child, essentially. I mean, he wasn't 18, was he? He was what, 17?
Yep.
So he's a child. I'm sorry. I don't care what any kind of a law says or what a age of consent says. 17 is still a child. Okay, so to shoot anyone, but especially a child, square in the chest where it pierces their heart. You know what I'm saying? Square. To have a shot that head on, there's no way that this other person was fighting you off, or that this other person went for your weapon, or this other person punched you in the jaw, and then you just happened to have a good enough aim on your shot to hit him in the chest like that. No, sir, because here's the thing. If you had hit him in the side of the head, if you had hit him in a leg, in the groin, like you said, even in the breast area, but not necessarily square into his chest like that, then I could say, okay, maybe there was a scuffle. But when you have such a head-on shot as to shoot someone in close range with a shot that you know is going to take them out, what scuffle, George Zimmerman? Where's your scuffle?
And the thing that makes that whole thing worse is it was a one-shot kill. If you are truly
right, it was an execution style. There was no shot up.
If you truly fear for your life and you're wrestling with somebody, you're just hoping to shoot them enough to get away, not be point blank precise and pull.
Right, and okay? he was shot. He was shot execution style. Like it was a one shot, one kill type of thing. It wasn't like he had 3 or 4 bullets in different areas of his body. I mean, it was a single gunshot wound to the chest, and he was gone.
So, as you guys probably know, on July 13, 2013, George Zimmerman was completely acquitted of second-degree murder and manslaughter. I would say this, and then I'm gonna give you 3 reasons that I say that this had to play with race. So, after he got acquitted, they talked to a couple of jurors. I think one of the jurors' name was B38. She was an African-American female. She was the only African-American, and I think she's African-American and Hispanic at the same time, that was on the panel. Everybody else was white. They asked her in Good Morning America, I think it was, why did she come up with that verdict and how did she feel? And she pretty much said, that as far as she was concerned, the law said she had to say that George Zimmerman was innocent, but in her heart, she believed that George Zimmerman was guilty because she didn't believe that the defense had proved beyond a shadow of a doubt why this happened. They asked her another question being, if she had to do this all over again, what would she do? Again, she made reference to if the law says she had to, she would, but God was going to be able to handle George Zimmerman his own. What it really came down to, what she finally admitted, was that at the beginning, the 12 of them was split. She was the one that said, manslaughter, and there's a couple of people that said not guilty, but the majority was, someone that said guilty. Over time, not on a large amount of time, they all wanted to change their vote to guilty. And she didn't, and she felt pressured to. Now, before everybody go off and call her a punk and all that, because she got pretty much berated all over internet that I read, I have been in these situations in the jury before. I just have a little bit stronger backbone. I have been the only black person on all jury, and the sad thing about it was the defendant wasn't even black. He was white. Because Easter was coming, I had 10 other people, because there was 2 of us on there that was black, that wanted to send this man to jail for the rest of his life because they didn't want to miss their Easter ham. And I said, I'm here to do a duty, and I wouldn't want somebody to put my life in jeopardy because you want to eat some Easter ham and hang out and get the Easter eggs. This man's going to sit in jail the rest of his life. We hung the jury, or we threatened to hang it, and then they all came back and just said, well, we'll just say not guilty. And I said, if you truly feel he's guilty, that's fine. You have to vote that way, and we're just going to vote what we feel, but you've already admitted to us that you just want to get to your grandbaby's house for Easter, and that ain't fair. So before we go on with my 3 reasons, what do you think about the juror that's come out and pretty much said, hey, I'm sorry, I believe that George Zimmerman is guilty. I couldn't vote that way because of the people I was with. She's admitted that she's sorry. She's admitted that she loses sleep over it. She's admitted that he should be in jail right now. What's your thought about this juror?
I understand where she's coming from. So the prosecution has to prove without a reasonable doubt that this person is guilty. And so legally, she's right. But honestly, I applaud her for doing what she was legally obligated to do, because when you go for a jury duty, at least from my understanding, Dad, correct me if I'm wrong since you've done it, when you go for jury duty, it is you have to do what they've legally told you to do, right? So if they're telling you that legally you have to acquit this person if they are not found, if it's not proven within a reasonable doubt for them to be guilty. She even said that in her heart that she thought that he was guilty, but she just did not feel that the prosecution did their duty in proving him guilty. So I don't even hold her responsible for that. That's on the prosecution, because the prosecution are the ones that are supposed to find, to prove to you, to not even to convince you, but to literally lay it out. This is what happened. This is what he did. The end, they are the ones that are supposed to lay that out for you. And if you can't look at all of the evidence that the prosecution gives you and say without a reasonable doubt that you think that he is guilty by what they gave you, then she did what she was told to do.
And see, for what I said, I feel for baby girl. I really do.
I do too. I do.
But I see it a different way, and here it is. I think that there's 3 things, if I sat on that jury, I could have hung it for, because there's 3 things to me that said reasonable doubt. The first one is the 911 call. Just for the fact that he made those comments. Now, what I would have done, because I've been jury foreman on these juries I sat on before, I would have sent a note back to the judge. And the note I would have sent would have said this: I need to know, or can you please ask what was meant by these a-holes, and when he called him an effing dog, I need to know what context that's in. That's the first one. The second one that'll cause me to hang it is where they found George Zimmerman at when the cops came. The 911 dispatcher had already told him, stay where you are. We don't need you to follow him. We're sending people right now. But by the time the cops had got there, he's standing over Trayvon's body that he just now shot. Why? What was the need that you had to follow him when you've already been told by 911 to stop where you are? The third thing that would have made me hang it is when you hear the part of that tape that they probably played in trial where there's somebody screaming, help me, help me. To me, and you look at his injuries, because there is a timeline that was given by a reporter, I think on CNN News, where they chronicled that and gave you the time. George Zimmerman had a bruise to the back of his head, like he probably rolled over and got kicked, and he had a cut on his nose. That was it. And one of the detectives said from the amount of time alone that it took for the paramedics and the police to get there, plus the amount of time that they worked on Trayvon when they got there, there would have been no time for them to work on George Zimmerman as if he had substantial injuries and he walked away from the ambulance that night, which means that he wasn't that hurt. Those 3 things alone for me is reasonable doubt enough for me to say there could have been something more to this than that. But going off of that, before I give you my other reasons, let's talk about Juror B37. So George Zimmerman did have a fan on the jury, Juror B37. She came out after 38 did. Now understand, and this was pointed out, so this is important for the listeners to know this before I talk about 37. Juror B38 went on this news show free of charge. She has not then or since tried to make a movie. She don't have a book deal. No one's paying her to come. She just wanted to come because she felt the way she felt about the case. She wanted everybody to know how she stood. Not the case with B37. B37 has a book deal in place where she's already written a book. She's getting paid now for appearances, was the only reason why she came out. And she sat on a news show in silhouette and said that the Trayvon Martin case was not a race issue and that she does not feel that he was profiled at all. That George Zimmerman just had a good heart and he was concerned about the break-in. Now, before I tell you that was kind of so Juror 37 is my first big reason. I'll tell you my other two after you tell me, what do you think about Juror B37? Is she trying to profit off of that now? Or does she really feel that way about George Zimmerman from all the things she's heard?
I don't know. I mean, I know that's not a good answer, but look, I'm on this podcast to be 100% honest. Like you mentioned at the beginning, I got a little bit of flack. I'm not going to mention no names. It doesn't matter. It's someone that I do know on a personal basis. They know who they are, and it's fine. Like, I did get a little bit of flack for being honest in my opinion about what could have happened between Jodi Arias and Travis Alexander. And I'm going to be honest about this. I don't know, but I'm here to be honest. Like, I'm not, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to say, oh, well, maybe you're right, Dad. You know what I'm saying? Like, or maybe they're right. Like, I'm not really, 10 years ago, you could have called me up. I probably would have swayed to somebody's opinion, you know what I'm saying, just to save face. But I'm 26 years old. I'm too old for all that. So I honestly, I don't know. I would like to believe that she's not just trying to profit. You know what I'm saying? Like, I would like to believe that she has, that she's a strong enough woman in herself to have her own opinions without having to, you know what I'm saying? But who knows? Like, she could be saying what she's saying now to profit off of whatever, if she thinks that there's some kind of an outcome, but she could also just really feel that way at this point. You know what I mean? So, girl, I hope that she's able to have her own. I hope that she's not doing it just for some kind of a benefit, whether that's financial or otherwise. But that's a tough one for me. For me personally, that's a tough one for me to answer as to whether I think that she is sound in her opinion, or if she is trying to get some kind of benefit out of it.
I'm going to give you guys now the two big reasons why, no matter how hard I tried, this came back to a racist case for me. The first one is this. If you guys did not know this, there is going to be a documentary release next month, which is July of this year. It's going to be called Rest in Power, the Trayvon Martin story. It is actually going to be a series, so it's going to be much like some of the Jodi Arias ones with the Bill Cosby. It's going to be like 6 or 8 episodes long on the Paramount Network. That comes into play. Another thing I want you guys to keep in mind that I didn't say is, remember that Trayvon Martin was and is the face of what we now have as the Black Lives Matter movement. He's the reason why that whole movement began.
If that hasn't caused controversy.
Right. No matter all the other murders and stuff of African Americans that you've heard, Trayvon Martin was the first one. So back to my first tip. Jay-Z is behind the production of Rest in Power, the Trayvon Martin story documentary. What if I was to tell you that George Zimmerman, despite all of the death threats, because understand that when he was acquitted, the Black Panthers put a death threat on his head. I don't know if you guys know a lot about the Panthers. Well, when's the last time you heard about them, seen them in the news? They're not one organization that's very boisterous and big. They don't come out and threaten people, but at this case, they did. Even up under that, George Zimmerman started to threaten Jay-Z about this documentary. He threatened to kill Jay-Z if this documentary ever came out. From other things I have read and researched, he's also made snide comments against other people that are of African-American descent. He's threatened to kill other African Americans. So that goes to my point of, if you don't want it to be a racist case, sit back and shut up, because now you making it worse than what it is. But here is my biggest piece that I said, I can't take this out of race. If you didn't know, in 2016, there was an auction that was held. The auction that was held was for the gun that he used to shoot Trayvon Martin. The organization that was putting this up for auction is called the United Gun Group. Trayvon Martin's parents, along with their attorney, had written to them and protested the sale of the gun. They swore that they would take the gun down, but then they recanted in the statement by saying that since George Zimmerman was acquitted of this crime, they cannot and would not stop any of their users from selling the gun, so they were going to go forward with the auction. Now, it had been said that there was bids up to $65 million for this gun. However, they were all hoaxes, because people that protested against this gun being sold, for obvious reason, was trying to clog up the algorithm of the site by putting up fake bids. But being that United was prepared for this, they had it set up another algorithm that will kick out all of the bets that were no good. So George Zimmerman unloaded this gun for $250,000. That's what he got. It was sold to a dude by the name of Racist Shootface, and George Zimmerman had put in the description of the sale, now you can own a piece of American history. Now, before I get your feedback on this, there's one more piece to that. When asked what he was going to do with the money, George Zimmerman said that some of the proceeds would go to fight against Black Lives Matter and them trying to put a stop to police shooting blacks. What's your thought on that?
Look, George Zimmerman. Look, homie, I tried. Okay, I tried real hard to say that you weren't a racist. But I could punch you in the face right now, sir. What do you mean? I'm sorry. Like, look, George Zimmerman, if you are listening to this right now, I recant everything that I have said in this podcast. Because, look, I was hoping that this was not a racist thing. I was not aware of all these death threats. I mean, I guess I just did not dig far enough. I don't know. But I was not aware of these death threats against Jay-Z. Look, you auctioned the murder weapon. Like, I'm sorry. I'm going to come out and say it. Like, I have always thought that George Zimmerman should have served time. I have never thought that this should have been protected underneath the standard ground law. I really don't. I mean, truthfully, I don't really believe in this. I mean, I don't believe in the standard ground law in the way that it is written, or the way that, I should say, the way that it is used. I believe in the standard ground law if you actually have a true threat. I mean, if somebody was to be breaking into my front door right now, I would stand my ground. You know what I'm saying? And I understand that. But you can't just be thinking that you could just, like, stand your ground for what? Like, you weren't even standing your ground for anything. Like, I've never really thought that he should have been protected underneath that law, because I have always felt that the stand your ground law should be a bit more specific. I understand if they're coming into your house. I understand if they are trying to break into your car. I understand if they are trying to break into your place of business, but you are out in the middle of the street, sir. So what ground are you trying to stand? Like, I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm very upset right now.
And the thing is up until I found this, I wanted to look at this case differently than any other African American did.
Right. Same.
Because I'll be honest, that's the first thing that came up when he was shot. If you go and Google George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin, there's a bunch of pictures that comes up. There's a bunch of topics that say, would it have been different if George Zimmerman was a black man shooting a white kid? I always try to debunk the easiest reason, which is always racism with us. But when I started looking into this even more and I found that, I'm like, I can't debunk it anymore, because you yourself, George, is putting that out there. No matter how many times your wife is saying, no, I don't think he's not racist and not this. Okay, you you sold a gun. If I shot a kid and it was really self-defense, first of all, my whole life's going to be wrecked because I got kids your age or older. Second of all, I don't want to auction the gun. I want to get the gun as far away from me. You know, I don't want to profit off the gun. Just throw it away, throw it in the bottom of a canal, ocean, something like that.
Just get rid of it, dude. Just throw it in the lake or something. Like, I'm sorry, Florida, we got a lot of beaches and stuff. Like, go out onto the pier in Daytona and throw it off. Like, I don't do that. Nobody go throw their gun off the pier. You'll probably get arrested. Don't do that. But I'm just saying, like, there are plenty of bodies of water in this state that you could have got rid of that gun if it was just that you didn't want it anymore. You know what I'm saying? And if you truly were standing your ground, George Zimmerman, like, you wouldn't first of all, if you were truly standing your ground, like, you would not have chased the child. I'm sorry, I don't care if he's not on top of you when you see him. Like, there's no ground to stand. Like, you chased him down and then tried to say that you stood your ground. And that, I'm sorry, like, that whole jury, like, shame on y'all. I'm sorry, like, I'm sorry. Me personally, it's good that I was never, like, having to do jury duty or nothing, because I probably would have hung the jury, just because I don't feel like, even if I didn't feel like there was enough to convict him, I definitely would not have thought that there was enough to acquit him.
But think about it, though, because of the laws that we have in our land, which is the double jeopardy law, right? If there was no double jeopardy law, I don't think you'd ever done that, because then his motive could have been questioned and he could have been retried. Okay, Mr. Zimmerman, if you really was sorry that, this really was self-defense, you selling guns, $250,000, let's go back to court. But also, if you look at the jury selection, I don't know, I know you've never been on a jury, but the defense and the prosecution gets to pick who they want on the jury. Each side could dismiss somebody. Notice that there wasn't very many colors in the jury box. And when I say colors, I don't necessarily mean black. I don't care if you're Asian. I don't care if you're Mexican. I don't care if you octoroon, any other race other than the white race.
Right. Any color but white. So.
Right. I don't care if you purple or green. Just give me somebody else up in there that could have a different opinion on what I'm saying. But when I read those things, I was still like, all right, maybe George is a little crazy. But then when you come up and you flat out say, I'm using a whole bunch of this money to debunk Black Lives Matter because this group is the reason Trayvon Martin they marching for Trayvon and they causing havoc in the police force and they bringing down corrupt cops. That's what I'm going to do. Sorry. That's a racist situation. Because I could never take a gun and sell it for somebody if I killed a kid or injured a kid or something else. I'm truly sorry. And if I'm not in jail, I'm on all of the news crews telling people, hey, man, look, you may hate me, but I'm sorry. I didn't shoot him because he was white. I didn't shoot him because I wanted to kill him. This kid nearly attacked me. He was strong. I had no option but to shoot him. He ain't saying any of that.
Right.
So I was hoping the man was just crazy. But from those listeners, you can make up your own mind. That's the reason why I could not take race out of it. And when I read that, I was sitting here, I read it 4 times. I couldn't believe it. I even went further to look up to make sure it was legitimate. It is legitimate. My question, I guess he was entitled to get the gun back because he got acquitted, because my first question was, well, why the heck does he even have the gun back? That was evidence in a murder, but I guess since he was acquitted, he could ask for the gun back, and they gave him his gun back.
That is how it works. I don't know if it works that way everywhere, but it is how it works in Florida, unfortunately. I mean, he was acquitted, so there was no reason for them to hold his gun. At that point, it was no longer, I mean, from the moment that he was acquitted, it was no longer considered a murder, so there was no reason to hold his gun in evidence.
Right. So, in closing on this very controversial case, what do you got to say in closing on the Trayvon Martin case?
What I gotta say in closing is, first of all, I want to punch George Zimmerman in the face. So, yeah, we need to be getting them shirts done, because I'm just gonna buy one in every color that says I want to punch him in the face, just one in every color, just to that way I'm not wearing, like the same shirt every single time, but like it says the same thing. You know what I'm saying? Because look, George Zimmerman makes me angry man, I see, and I wanted to look at this and be like, maybe he's not racist, like maybe he just was like pissed off that day, but like, homeboy, you threatened Jay-Z and you used the proceeds of a murder weapon to try to stop Black Lives Matter. Like, no, sir. Like, I'm sorry. Like, first of all, I want to say that my thoughts and prayers go out to Trayvon's family, because I am sure that to this day, even though it has been about 6 years since this boy was taken away, I'm sure that they are still grieving. I'm sure they will. It's not something that will ever go away. I cannot imagine losing a child, especially not in that kind of a way. So my heart and prayers go out to them, and rest in peace to Trayvon. This was completely unnecessary. Like, I'm sorry to say, I don't care. I mean, I do care, but I don't care in this situation. Like, because he wasn't high, because it doesn't appear that he was doing anything he was supposed to do, because the boy was carrying Skittles and an Arizona sweet tea. Like, these are things that teenagers carry. Like, I had a thing for Arizona. I mean, I don't like it now because I drank too much of it in high school, but I had a thing for Arizona sweet tea in high school. You know what I'm saying? And I love me some Skittles. So, like, these are things that kids carry with them. Like, if he had shot him and they had found like a knife or a gun or something, I could maybe say, okay, maybe he threatened him. But he didn't have anything like that. Like, what's the boy gonna do? Throw his Skittles at your head? Like, please. So, this completely unnecessary. I mean, my heart goes out to his girlfriend that unfortunately had to hear all of this transpire. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's another tragedy in and of itself, because I mean, I'm sure that is traumatizing. I'm sure she's had her own healing that she's had to go through, counseling or whatever. So I hope that she is maybe not healed, but on her way to healing. I hope his parents are on their way to healing as much as one can in a situation this way. And to George Zimmerman, dude, I think you got away with murder. I mean, if I'm going to be real, I would think that George Zimmerman completely got away with murder. I agree with you, Dad, when you say that there was plenty of evidence to show that this should not have been covered or protected under stand your ground. There was plenty of evidence to show that this was just George Zimmerman looking for, I don't know what, a fight or whatever. But regardless, it shouldn't have happened. And I think that, George Zimmerman is about on the pedestal of Casey Anthony for me. The only difference being that Casey Anthony killed her own child, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I've given that. We have an episode about that. But I mean, he's about on that same pedestal, because dude got away with it scot free. I mean, he's out there. I mean, what is he doing? You know what I mean? Maybe he moved or whatever. I'm sure he did, but he's out there living his life and going about life. I'm sure he's got a job and all that stuff. You know what I'm saying? So while this may follow him when people pull up his name or do a search for him for jobs, it definitely doesn't impact him the way that it impacts Trayvon's friends and family. So, this is a tragedy. I'm mad that George Zimmerman got off with this. But more than anything, I am sad that Trayvon's life was lost for no reason. So that's where I'm at.
Well, here's why I sit on the case. Race aside, a young man lost his life over stupidity. And I think a lot of people that's given power is not looked at 100%. George Zimmerman should have been looked at. I'm sure somewhere in his past, he's got some issues otherwise, because people doesn't become this violent overnight. You've done something like this before. What was the real reason that you felt like you need to carry a gun? These are questions you should be asking. I do want to talk a little bit on this case about the group that I feel Trayvon Martin is responsible for finding, which is Black Lives Matter. I know that Black Lives Matter gets a lot of flack, and they're yelled about. They're all, now we've got Blue Lives Matter because Black Lives Matter is against the police. It wasn't necessarily that they were against the police. I work for Apple, as I've said that before. And the one thing, no matter if you guys like the products that we build or not, the one main reason I like working for this company is because Apple is truly a company that is diverse. They want to make sure everybody feels included. For goodness sake, I work for the only company that has the first openly gay CEO anywhere in the land, and he's come out about it, being Tim Cook. In February, because they do something for every month. I mean, Women's Movement Month, Indian Month, LGBTQ Month. So February is Black History Month. This year, they brought Patricia Colliers to us. Now, she is one of the CEOs of Black Lives Matter. And the woman that was interviewing her from Apple was white. Black Lives Matter really wanted to put whites and blacks together so that we could come together for a common bond and say we can stop all of this. Because that was one of the questions that Patrice was asked, which is, what can we as white Americans do to get this? Understand, they're not out there trying to protest because they want to start problems. They want young black people to stop getting shot. They want white people who's on board that's decent, and gray people and green people and brown and yellow people to come together and say, no matter what color you are, we got to stop this nonsense. But unfortunately, it's starting with us because we already have 4 people that's already been killed for no reason, unfortunately, by police. Trayvon would have been 22 years old right now. We're coming up on the 6th anniversary of his death. That boy did not get to get married. He didn't get to have a kid. His parents didn't get to see what he was going to become because of the action of one. I can't say what happened 100% when I was there that night because I wasn't there, but I have my beliefs. And I think if it wasn't for the fact, even if George Zimmerman did feel like he was breaking into houses, that was not his call to make. He was told by the police, stop, you're just going to make this even worse. He followed Trayvon that night, regardless of what his color is, because I guess he just wanted to fight with somebody, and he saw this kid coming through that he thought he can get over on. And because of that, and because of the other reasons that I've mentioned, and because I do believe that there is reasonable doubt, and because of things that his dumb butt is saying right now, I don't feel he's sorry at all. He should be locked up, the key thrown away, and never get out again. So the moral of the story, guys, is wherever color we are, we got to somewhere find a common bond somewhere. And this is coming from a man that has a white wife, 6 interracial kids, 4 interracial grandbabies. I love all people, but everybody ain't me. But if we don't find a way to stop this ain't going to be the last Trayvon Martin. And for those white people that's comfortable with it, it's going to start happening to Nick Jones and Lil Shirley too, because it's going to spread. Violence just spreads, and if it starts with one culture, it will end up in another. So let's somehow find some common ground to get along. All right, so there you have it, the murder of Trayvon Martin. So the question I got for you is, did you learn anything new that you did not know when it came to this case? A lot of people did not know a lot of things about George Zimmerman that I broke forth. Didn't know about the auction of the gun. Didn't know what he said he was going to do with the money. Nobody knew a lot of these things. And it was very important to this case because I think it showed to the heart of what George Zimmerman was doing or what he had planned to do that night. As much as I would love for this not to be a racial case, I would be lying to you if I told you that it was not. And I got a lot of flack from people saying, well, he was half Hispanic. Okay, we got racist Hispanic people too. Like we got racist black people and racist white people. That did not matter. I don't even know if George was embracing that side of things. He was going at this totally as if, these people, he, as he called them, these a-holes, they get away with everything. Why are we calling people names and things of that nature? So let me tell you where I stand on this case. First, let me tell you some things that has changed in the 6 years almost that has been that this case was recorded. On the episode, you heard me say that I'm interracially married. I have a white wife, and I believe I said I have 4 grandchildren at the time. Well, some things has changed. I am still married to the same white woman. We've been together now 23 years, but my grandchildren has grown. So I have went from 4 to now 7 grandchildren, with my youngest grandchild now was just born about a couple months ago. Now I still only have though 1 granddaughter. So out of all of those grandbabies, I have 6 grandsons, 1 granddaughter. So that did change a little bit. The other thing that changed was my stance of Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter, and I've gotten flack from this, but if you do your digging and if you do your research, Black Lives Matter is one of the most crookedest organizations that's walked the earth. And I've tried to educate people that whenever you hear a Black person say Black Lives Matter, it does not always necessarily mean the group. That phrase was coined by a young Black girl when Trayvon Martin was shot. And apparently the group took that name on, trademarked it, and ran with it. Patricia Colliers has been caught up in a whole lot of stuff. They have footage where they're going to her house. They're accused her of fraud. I mean, the list goes on. Trayvon Martin's family has even come out and said that Black Lives Matter never did anything with the money towards them that they told everybody that they were going to do. Trayvon is the whole reason why Black Lives Matter even existed. So they promised they was going to help them out financially and help them out with attorneys and give them this money and march on, for Black rights. None of that is happening. As a matter of fact, for a lot of people, they think that Black Lives Matter is a very racist group in their own right, and that they're doing nothing to make anything better with race relations between Blacks and whites. Some people has called them the Black version of the Ku Klux Klan. To a degree, I can believe some of that because I've seen it with my own eyes. If you want to go back to where Trump was running for re-election, where he was trying to get his second term, Black Lives Matter New York, I believe, had pretty much came out and said if Trump won, that they was going to burn the city down, literally and figuratively. So they're already telling you, if this dude wins, we just going to rip up the town. What good does that do? Yeah, a lot of us didn't like Trump. A lot of us didn't want him back in office. A lot of us still don't. But no one's going to go out and blow up a town and shoot people and all that because the person you don't want in office got in. They threatened that. And then the one thing that really swayed me that way, I think it's still on PBS. It was on Netflix a long time ago. There was a documentary called Accidental Courtesy. Accidental Courtesy was done by a man named Daryl Davis. Daryl Davis happens to be one of the biggest jazz musicians in the world. And he would go around to all these bars and educate people that without Black people, you would not have jazz, rock and roll, and a whole lot of other music because contrary to everybody's belief, African Americans started that. Little Richard always said that he was the one that created it, but the white man stole it and repackaged it and sold it as their own thing. He preached that to the day that he was dead. And there's a documentary out that kind of proves that. And it does also prove that without Little Richard, we would not have the Beatles. But that's a discussion for another time. But Daryl Davis did this documentary because he wanted to show you that if we just sat down as people, I don't got to like you. You don't got to like me. We don't got to like each other's colors of skin. But if we just stop being ignorant long enough to sit down with each other and just have a conversation, wow, this world would be a better place. Daryl Davis is the only Black man in the world that actually owns true, authentic KKK hoods, robes, other memorabilia. He wants to open up a museum to show he has these and to show what he's doing with them and to teach about kindness and how not to be racist. Well, came the day that Daryl Davis had to meet up with Black Lives Matter. They called him to a meeting at a restaurant. I think it was in Chicago, and they wanted to talk to him. And Daryl Davis, out of the kindness of his heart, he showed up. And he sat there and he listened to where these people was berating him. They was calling him all kinds of Uncle Toms and how can you sit down and eat with the enemy and they trying to kill us and you don't care. And he sat there and listened. But guess what happened when it was time for Daryl Davis to talk? They didn't want to hear nothing. And if you ever see the documentary, he's like, are you going to let me say anything? no, we're not going to say anything. We don't sit here and have lunch and eat with Uncle Tom's. Why did you call the meeting? So yes, my stance and a lot of other people's stances of all colors has changed when it came to Black Lives Matter. They are not a good group. So that part of my stance changed. However, my part of the stance that did not change is that George Zimmerman should have been locked up in jail for the rest of his life. As you heard during the case, there's a juror that was beside herself because she felt like she was forced into saying that he was not guilty. She used the excuse at the beginning that the prosecution did not prove their case. If you listen to the 911 tape, that proved the case to me, because he was doing things against the 911 operator's instructions. It's fishy that he wants you to call him when you get there, other than just saying, send the police back to me. That's what any person, regardless of color, race, anything, would have done. If me and you was in trouble and they're like, hey man, give us the address. When the police get there, do you want them to come back to you? Yeah. If they get stuck, have them give me a call. I can get them back here, but I'm going to give you the instructions now. Have them come back, because I don't know what's going to be happening by the time they get here. That ain't what Zimmerman did. He was like, nah, man, have them call me. Why? But let me tell you, George Zimmerman's life has not been well. As you did hear, yes, the Black Panthers put a hit on George Zimmerman's head. The Black Panthers, even though they're here to protect the Black people, they say, I don't agree with any kind of violence. I get that. But they are really one of those quieter groups. If they do move and something happens, they move very quietly. So they're not really out and big and boisterous like a KKK would be by saying, we're going to show up here and we're going to take you out. No, but they did make it known that they put a hit on his head. That's very telling. So what has happened to George Zimmerman since he got acquitted? Well, the only good thing that he probably did out of all of this, and they made a big deal about it, was in 2013, July 17th to be exact. It was just 4 days after his trial verdict. He and another man helped to rescue a family of 4 from their vehicle after a single car accident took place. Now, after that, that's all the good that happened to Zimmerman. Now, remember, his wife was one of the first ones at the time to say, I don't think George would do this. But at the same time, George is being very abusive to not only her, but other people. Well, in 2013, his now estranged wife ends up calling 911 and reported that he had assaulted her father and was also threatening her with a gun. Now, guess what? I think this dude is just like Teflon, because he was in charge of that incident. But then in November of the same year, he was charged with a felony aggravated assault after he allegedly pointed a shotgun at his girlfriend during a domestic violence incident. But guess what happened to that one? Well, that case was later dropped. But then in January 2015, he was again charged with domestic assault after allegedly throwing a wine bottle at a different girlfriend. But once again, the charges were later dropped. This dude was more Teflon than John Gotti. Well, so the law ain't putting him in jail. So on September 9th of 2014, Zimmerman was named by police in a road rage incident in which another driver, later named by police as Matthew Apperson, claimed that Zimmerman followed and threatened him. Zimmerman later claimed in testimony that Apperson approached him over a rear tire leaking air, which he already knew about. But as he explained this to Apperson, Apperson looked at him and asked him if he knew he was wrong for killing that little black boy. After this, Zimmerman attempts to lose Apperson, which he does after the two of them stop at a gas station and Zimmerman drove off. But that ain't the last that they heard. Now, September 9th of 2014 is when that happened. But on May 11, 2015, Apperson shot at Zimmerman while the two were driving in separate cars on the street in Lake Mary. Zimmerman was grazed by glass and metal shards when the bullet broke through his passenger side window and was stopped by the metal window frame, causing minor facial injuries from flying glass and debris. Zimmerman flagged down a police officer and was taken to the hospital. Apperson maintained that Zimmerman was the aggressor and that Apperson acted in self-defense. That sound familiar to you? Zimmerman also had a gun with him at the time of the incident, but Zimmerman's attorney said that George absolutely denies having shown it, waved, displayed, pointed it. A Lake Mary police spokesperson stated that the investigation has proven that George Zimmerman was not the shooter. But on May 15th of 2015, Apperson was jailed in Sanford, Florida with a bond of $35,000. And while free on bond, Apperson was accused, convicted, and jailed for disorderly conduct, which revoked his bond. Lake Mary PD learned that Apperson has exhibited unusual behaviors in which he had recently been admitted to a mental institution, and it appears that Apperson has a fixation on Zimmerman and has displayed some signs of paranoia, anxiety, and bipolar disorder. So on September 22nd of 2015, a judge ruled that Apperson would stand trial for second-degree attempted murder along with 1 count of aggravated assault, 1 count of shooting into an occupied vehicle, and Apperson was convicted of attempted murder and aggravated assault with a firearm on September 6th of 2016. Then on October 17th of 2016, Apperson was sentenced to 20 years in prison on the charge of attempted second-degree murder, and he was also given a 15-year concurrent sentence for aggravated assault stemming from the same incident. So that tells you how fixated this guy was on Zimmerman. 8 months later, after he saw him the first time, he comes back to get him. They say he was fixated on him. I think that probably he was. I think that he was trying to revenge Trayvon Martin's death by shooting at him, hoping to kill him. Just by the statement alone, you know you was wrong for killing a little black boy, and then you see him 8 months later and shoot him. Yeah, that tells me you have that vendetta. You're trying to go after him. But nothing good ever comes for people that does things that they should not do to this caliber. Whatever's in the dark comes to light. I'm not saying that George Zimmerman deserves to be killed. So if anybody says that, that's not what I'm saying. But karma, as they say, is a B. And you have more people than just African-American people that was mad about this situation with Trayvon Martin. I have friends that of all colors who is still mad today like I am that Zimmerman is out here walking around living his good life. I'm more mad that you had at least 3 different opportunities to put this dude in jail and he still walked. Nothing ever stuck to him. All the domestic violence, this murder, nothing. But I do think that one day George Zimmerman's number is going to be up. And that might be the day that when he finally meets God for himself. I am still a true believer that no one can punish you like God can. But the last dastardly thing that he did was on December 4th of 2019. If you guys did not know this, George Zimmerman did sue the Martin family and others that was involved in the trial for $100 million on grounds of false evidence and abuse of process. The suit was dismissed by a judge in February 2022 who found no evidence to support any of Zimmerman's claims. And on February 18th of 2020, Zimmerman filed a defamation lawsuit for $265 million against Pete Buttigieg and Elizabeth Warren. The suit was dismissed in February of 2021, and the judge said Zimmerman failed to sufficiently allege an essential element of defamation. How can you sue, first of all, the Trayvon Martin family for false evidence and abuse of process? Then you try to sue 2 other people for defamation when your dumb butt went trying to sell the gun on an auction site and your statement is, come and own a piece of American history. And when they ask you what you're going to do with it, that you're going to use it to go against Black Lives Matter to try to stop them from protesting about cops shooting black people in the wrong, yeah, your lawsuit got thrown out automatically from that because your butt's out here running your mouth about everything. So guys, in closing, Zimmerman's still running around. Zimmerman is still dodging bullets. But eventually, we all get caught in the end. And one day, no matter who or what you believe in, I do believe that one day we all will pay for everything that we have done that is evil to someone else. All right, guys, I hope that you guys did enjoy this. Let me tell you what I have coming for you next week. My author. I have announced her before, but she definitely will be here next week. We're going to hear from two-time Emmy award-winning talk show host and author of Watch Where They Hide, the one and only Tamron Hall will be joining me. This was a very enlightening conversation, very down to earth. You want to tune in for that one so you can hear about her brand new book, Watch Where They Hide. And she tells you the inspirations behind that and how she come to write it. As a matter of fact, the main character in that book is named Jordan Manning, and you don't want to miss how she derived at that name. And then, my extraordinary person has sold out TED Talks every time she does one. She's a survivor of childhood abuse, and man, she's had a lot of things go wrong in her life, but she is doing everything right now and helping others. You don't want to miss my extraordinary person, Joelle Castex. So we have Tamron Hall next week, Joelle Castex the week after that. You definitely do not want to miss those. All right, thank you guys for tuning in. Let me remind you that I will be at True Crime Fest in Fayetteville, Arkansas, August 2nd and 3rd of 2024. And then I will be at CrimeCon UK representing my other podcast, Extinguished, with LaDonna Humphrey, September 21st and 22nd of 2024. Links to both of those will be in the show notes if you want to get tickets for those, if you're going to be near those places. Also, if you do pick up a ticket for CrimeCon UK, make sure you use the code word Extinguished to get yourself 10% off of your ticket. Once again, thank you guys for joining me. I know that you do have many choices for true crime and interview podcasts, and I am just grateful that for the last 2.5 years, you guys have chosen me. All right, I hope you're being good to yourself and each other, and always remember, always stay humbled. An act of kindness can make someone's day. A little love and compassion can go a long way. And remember that there is an extraordinary person in all of us. I'll catch you on the next one.
Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. Join us on social media. One link to the link tree has it all. Feel free to drop us a line at truecrimeandauthors@gmail.com. Cover art and logo designed by Arslan. Sound mixing and editing by David McClam. Intro script by Sophie Wild and David McClam. Theme music, Legendary, by New Alchemist. Introduction and ending credits by Jackie Voice. See you next time on True Crime, Authors, and Extraordinary People.